My name is Allison. I am the Life Kids Director here at Life Church. We are so excited that you are here to worship with us this weekend. If you are new here, wow, that is awesome. I need you to do me a favor. Get your hands on one of these. We call it a connection card. All you have to do is fill it out, legibly please, and then take it to the merch counter right after service. And one of my friends will hook you up with an awesome gift. This summer, 707 is offering the Best Week Ever Camp. And for more information on that, here's Christian.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to be bringing you this amazing news. This summer, July 9th through the 13th, we are going to be offering our first ever student camp. It's called Best Week Ever, and it really is going to be the best week ever. So parents, if you have a student who is in 5th through 12th grade, get them here. It's gonna be a ton of fun. And guess what? It's entirely free. It's not gonna cost you a thing. They'll get a free t-shirt, free meals every night, and a couple other things. So go to lifechurchmichigan.com/teens. That's where you can find all the information and where you can sign up. And remember, the best is yet to come.
Wow, I'm excited for Best Week Ever. I love what God is doing through our student ministries. And I'm excited about this weekend, Easter weekend, because whether you call Life Church your home or you're just here checking things out for the first time, you belong here. Now listen, I know it can be tough when you're in a big church environment, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. That's why we've designed smaller groups that meet in people's homes called life groups. Life groups are about doing life together. And the spring semester of life groups actually kick off in just a few short weeks. You can get details about life groups by going to our website, lifechurchmichigan.com.
Hey Life Church, my name is Brian. I'm the Midland Campus Director and oversight of life groups here at Life Church, and would love to invite you to be a part of a life group in our next semester kicking off in the next few weeks. We believe here at Life Church that life is better together and in community, and we love circles over rows, and that's where you can meet new people in the church and grow in your faith. And you can register online at lifechurchmichigan.com/lifegroups. And to bring this home, here's a story from my good friend Abby. Check it out.
I'm sitting in the parking lot at Life Church and thinking about hope for the first time in a week. My life has had countless moments of pure hopelessness in it, and this past week, that was all I could see or think about. But leaving Life Group tonight, I just felt filled with a desire to find the hope that I couldn't before. This last year, after having been raped and not having any positive relationships with guys since then, has left me more hopeless than I had ever felt before. I had secluded myself from most faith-related things when it happened, and afterwards I felt too ashamed to pursue a relationship with God. It took me months to bring myself to go to Life Church after my counselor recommended it, and now I'm blessed with not one, but 2 more beacons of hope, Life Church and this life group. Even though I haven't reached out to many friends at the church because I haven't been too great at doing that, I still always leave Life Church feeling more hopeful than when I walked in. And Life Group has shown me that I'm surrounded by people who struggle or have struggled in ways similar to me. And seeing everyone surviving and making it through this life gives me hope that I can too. I can't help but think about the tattoo on my wrist that I got to be a daily reminder to have hope. My wrist says Bienvenue à minuit, which is French for welcome to midnight. It's an idea I got from To Write Love on Her Arms and made into my own reminder that every day is a brand new day to try again if I messed up. Beneath those words is a drawing of a heart monitor line with a semicolon in the middle. This reminds me that despite my attempts to end my life, God wasn't finished with my story then and isn't now. And that thought gives me the most hope of all.
Raindrops are falling on my head, and just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops are falling on my head and they keep falling. Raindrops keep falling on my head, but that doesn't mean my eyes will soon be turning red. Crying's not for me, 'cause I'm never gonna stop the rain by complaining, because I'm free. Nothing's worrying me.
How are we doing, Life Church? We doing good? Well, my name is John. Thanks so much for starting your Easter weekend right here. We've never done a Friday night gathering, so you guys are pioneers. You guys are awesome, and I'm fired up. Are you fired up? Awesome. Well, do me a favor. Have you ever felt overwhelmed? So if you've got a job, or if you're a student, or if you're a parent, I think I've checked all the boxes for everybody in the room. You've probably felt overwhelmed. We're all in the same boat. So on the count of 3, we're gonna say the same thing out loud. We're gonna say, I am overwhelmed. 1, 2, 3, I am overwhelmed. So we got that off our chest. The good news is, you're not alone. Many of us feel overwhelmed in life. In fact, in my own life, I have felt overwhelmed recently because our family got bigger in the last 6 months. We adopted a little baby boy named Levi. We'll put a picture of him up on the screen. Aww. And he's a sweetheart. And have you ever had a baby before? Because they're cute for the first 5 minutes. And then it's crazy, like they want food. Like they expect you to feed them at their discretion, right? They have their own timetable for ticking time bombs in their diapers. And so that kind of gets you feeling anxiety and being overwhelmed. But I would hold him, and he's so cute, and the other kids thought he was cute. So we brought Levi home and set up a little bassinet in our room. And my 2-year-old at the time, Seth, he thought that it was an invitation for him to start sleeping in my room. And we call Seth Tommy Boy. Have you guys seen the movie Tommy Boy? Fuck guy and little co. So that's Seth. And so he just kind of moved into our bedroom. And the first couple nights it was cute because we had little baby and then big brother Seth. But by night 10, night 11, big brother Seth graduated from the floor and snuck into mom and dad's bed. Now, I don't know how you feel about your little ones sleeping between you and your significant other. I'm not cool with it because his action stopped some other actions in my bed. And some of you, you're like, wait, what are you describing, Pastor John? Well, there's children in the room. But when you've got a baby and then you got the big boy in the bed, I mean, listen, when you are married, there should not be a TV in your room. There should not be a flat screen. There's only 2 things that should be happening in your bed. Sleep is one of them. But Seth is interrupting stuff, right? You're still kind of getting nervous. You're like, this isn't an Easter message. What kind of church is this? Maybe you haven't been to a church that had a happy pastor, all right? So I was overwhelmed with anxiety because my kid is sleeping with, this went on for months, okay? In fact, as of last week, this little son of a gun was still slipping into our bed. I wasn't getting sleep. The baby had already moved out of the room, okay? 3-year-old Seth is like moved in permanent residency in my bed. So here's what I did. The kid has never seen Star Wars, but I introduced him to the idea of porgs. Have you seen a porg before? Here's a picture of porgs. They're in The Last Jedi, right? I'm a huge Star Wars freak. So I said, Seth, to my little 3-year-old, I said, Seth, if you will sleep in your big boy bed down the hall for to sleep, I will buy you a porg. And my 3-year-old, he has a speech impediment. He goes, pog, pog, pog. And would you believe an Easter miracle occurred this week, friends?
2 nights ago, for the very first time in 6 months, my 3-year-old son slept in his big boy bed. So yesterday, I proudly took him to Toys R Us, where everything is slashed down price, and we got that kid a Pogue. And then last night, he snuck in my room again. So, the reason why my son couldn't sleep in his own bed is because he was overwhelmed with anxiety. He was afraid of like monsters in his closet or the dark. Remember when you were a kid and you were afraid of, the sounds at night? See, we can all be overwhelmed with anxiety. It doesn't matter how old you are. And so today, for week 1 of this new journey, this new series, Overwhelmed, we've got 3 words, a simple hashtag that we're gonna wrestle with this evening. And it's simply this: when anxiety attacks. Say that with me: when anxiety attacks. In fact, if you've got a smartphone, someone's got anxiety right now. If you guys, that's all right, you're welcome here. Pull out your smartphone, fire up Facebook, check into Life Church Michigan, and then type in that hashtag, when anxiety attacks. Because you and I all have friends and family who are always whining and complaining on Facebook, and perhaps, just perhaps, you being here tonight might help change the trajectory of their lives this Easter weekend. When anxiety attacks. And so let's just dive right into this. What is anxiety? It is simply this. Here's what anxiety is. You can't sleep at night, you're freaking out, your mind is going fast forward. Anxiety is simply a down payment on a problem you don't already have. You and I, we get overwhelmed with problems, with stress. Oh, I got to get this paper in on time. Oh, I got this project at work. Oh, my significant other, they won't talk to me. Anxiety is a down payment on a problem you don't already have. And yet you and I, we allow ourselves to get overwhelmed with anxiety. Anxiety can overwhelm us and paralyze us. We start thinking of all these what ifs and these lies and these whispers that infiltrate our minds and get into our heart, and we get paralyzed in life. How many of you feel overwhelmed this Easter weekend? And I think the problem is we're here to help you. We're getting to the Easter story. Hang with me, right? Here's the good news. Here's the deal. We get hung up on anxiety. Here's why we get overwhelmed: because we've made mistakes in the past. You and I have messed up. You and I have been embarrassed by past decisions. And so we start, what if this happens again in the future? Or what if this happens? We spend a lot of energy remembering failures. God spent a lot of love saying we could forget. That's the Easter story. That God erases the past and gives us a promising future. So how do we get past this anxiety? How do we get past the paralysis that chains us to the past? Well, when you start to get anxious, remember this. This is counseling 101. You cannot control what happens to you in life, but you can control and choose your reaction. You and I cannot control what's going to happen tomorrow. All you can do is choose how you're going to react. And when anxiety begins to creep in this weekend, you're getting ready to meet up with family or friends or people you haven't talked to in a while, and you start to get anxious. What if this topic comes up? What if they ask me this? Listen, you can't control it. All you can do is choose how you will react. And I know a lot of times, we just keep hanging on to these past regrets and these past failures and these past wounds. You start healing the moment you stop blaming. Oh, this is counseling time, isn't it? We're doing some heart surgery. You came to Easter service. You're going to leave here with some practical help when you feel overwhelmed with anxiety. Listen, following God does not mean that you can kiss anxiety goodbye. Because there are men, women, teenagers, and children who love God, go to church, and still struggle with crippling anxiety. Now, sometimes it means you need to see a professional doctor, and that is fantastic. In fact, I respect any man or any woman who can plant themselves in the seat of a good Christian counselor and get the help they need. Perhaps there's a chemical imbalance and there's drugs for that, right? I have drugs that I take for depression, so there's no shame in getting the help you need. But just for commonplace anxiety, let's talk about that. Let's talk about commonplace anxiety, because even the first followers of Jesus had anxiety. On that Good Friday, when Jesus was slowly tortured and slaughtered on the cross, all his disciples were gone. They were out of there because they were overwhelmed with the fear of getting arrested or getting thrown in jail. So they gone. All the men left. In fact, on that first Easter Sunday, it wasn't the men that showed up, it was the women. Hashtag women first, right? So the women were the ones who went to the tomb, and it was in Matthew chapter 28, picking up in verse 5, that the angel shows up and said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified." And then those magical words, "He is not here. He has risen, just as he said." And so don't miss this. So the women hurried away from the tomb anxious. They were overwhelmed with a feeling of anxiety, yet still filled with joy as they ran to tell his disciples. So right there, you've got a Bible verse that even on Easter Sunday, the very first followers of Jesus had anxiety. They were overwhelmed with what ifs, and yet they also had joy. So I want to give you some hope this weekend, because I know there's lots of people who are freaking out, who are stressed out. Some of you all you're having your best day ever. Okay, some of you are just straight up like, "John, this message is..." I know that because there's some SVSU students here. It's their 21st birthday, and they're celebrating it at church, y'all. How cool is that? But some of y'all in life, man, you're gonna have anxiety. You're gonna turn on the cable news and freak out. You're gonna go on social media and you're gonna see people angry, and it gets you all stirred up. They had anxiety, yet they were filled with joy. And they weren't paralyzed in place. They moved forward, and that's where verse 9 comes in. I love this. On that first Easter, it says, "Suddenly Jesus met them." In the midst of anxiety, these women pushed forward, and they came face to face with the risen carpenter king. See, when you are overwhelmed with fear and stress and doubt, God doesn't push you away. Our God draws near. Jesus said that he is close to the brokenhearted, to the anxious. And so I love that on the Easter Sunday, the risen Christ, the first thing he does is he shows up in the middle of the anxiety of these women. Because when we're thrown around in the mists of uncertainty, when we're overwhelmed with feelings of despair, listen, God is the solid rock at the bottom of our failures. He's always there with us. The last words of Jesus, "I will never leave you until the very end of the age." Our God is close to you when you're overwhelmed with anxiety. See, this message is not like a how-to. Follow these 3 steps and you'll have a happy life. Ding, right? When you follow Jesus, you're not promised, rainbows and Skittles and unicorns. No. Jesus said, "In this world you will have trouble. But take heart, because he has overcome the world." You see, Jesus didn't come to tell us the answers to the questions of life. Jesus came to be the answer. And that's the heart of this series, Overwhelmed. That's the solution to all the problems we experience in life. That's why Easter is a big deal. When a dude dies and then rises from the grave by his own power, that shows that he's got power. And when Jesus says, "Simply trust me," you have permission to allow anxiety to melt away and to trust the master who has overcome death. Now here's the deal. You're gonna have troubles in life. because this world is broken. This is Pottery Barn. We broke it. We deal with it. And so storm clouds will roll through your life. I don't care if you're 13 or you're 30 or you're 90. We all have anxiety. But here's the deal. When I read the Bible, I see women and men who get a deeper experience with the living God in the midst of their suffering. For example, the earliest written book of the Bible is not Genesis. Scholars will tell you that the earliest written historical book in the Bible is a book called Job. Job's a bad story. It's about this guy, everything is great, it's like he won the Price is Right, and then suddenly he loses everything. His kids, his cattle, his land, his health, everything is rotten, right? It's like Joel Osteen Inside Out, right? He's having his worst day ever, and yet he doesn't curse God. He trusts even though he doesn't understand during the storm. And so at the end of the book of Job, in Job chapter 38, verse 1, it says, "Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm." See, sometimes God's greatest lessons for us are delivered through our greatest heartaches. You may be overwhelmed. You may be anxious, but there's always a purpose for everything that happens in your life. If you are his, John chapter 10, you are his. And so everything that happens from that day forward after you trust Christ is designed and allowed by a loving Father. There's a purpose for your pain. Just look at the heroes of the faith. In the book of Genesis, Joseph didn't know if or how or when he would get out of prison, but he served God anyways. God allowed Peter to fall in the water, but he didn't allow him to drown. God allowed Daniel to be thrown into a pit with lions, and we're going to talk about lions in just a minute, but he didn't allow him to get eaten. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, God threw them into the fiery furnace, but he didn't let them get burned. In fact, in that story, they throw 3 men into the heater. They look in and they see 4 men. They saw someone who looked like a son of man. Jesus was there with them, and when the king turned up the heat 7 times hotter, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego got to experience Jesus more deeply and intimately in their lives. There's a purpose for the pain. There's a reason for the anxiety. The question is, will you trust God that he is good, that he is loving, and that there's a reason for this season that you are in? Because God speaks to us in the overwhelming storms of life. Every time people are stressed out, freaking out, hurting in the Bible, they turn to God, and he's a mighty rescuer. He specializes in "it can't be done." In fact, "it can't be done" is not in God's vocabulary. Don't believe me? Look at the empty tomb. That's all the proof you need. So listen, when you're anxious, when you're overwhelmed, when your heart is hurting, never come into agreement with what your circumstances say. Instead, come into agreement with what God has already said. God has spoken promises over your life. And when times get tough, stand on the rock of truth, because not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some come to clear your path. That storm that was sent to break you, that will be the storm God uses to make you. God uses the fiery furnace to forge our character. In Romans chapter 8, verse 28, it's a quote that's always thrown out. You know, something bad goes on, you're in the hospital, life throws you a curveball, and some well-meaning Christian comes in, pats you on the hand, and quotes Romans 8:28. Well, God's working out all things good for the people who love him. I hate that person. That's why I don't do hospital calls, because I've read the next verse. Verse 29 says that God is using those circumstances to conform you into the image of his Son, the suffering servant. See, when you trust Christ, it doesn't mean everything's going to be hunky-dory and perfect. This isn't Mayberry. But it does mean you don't do life alone. Peter wrote these words In 1 Peter chapter 5, towards the end of his life, Peter, the right-hand man of Jesus, picking up in verse 6, he says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand." When you're having a sleepless night, you can either try to fight that fear on your own or to release it to God. And that's hard when you're anxious. I remember my first anxiety attack. It was in October of 2010. And I'm a pastor, I'm a ministry leader, right? And I was flying back from this big leadership conference, and I was by myself, and I had a connecting flight in Atlanta. I've been to Atlanta Airport, the busiest airport in the world. And my pulse was racing. And I could not stop sweating. And I was going up and down escalators, kind of like on repeat, and my mind was just racing. And I didn't realize what was happening, but I was experiencing an anxiety attack. And if you've ever been through that, it's overwhelming. Because your heart is just beating fast and you can't understand what's happening and you feel like you're about to die, right? It's just horrible and scary. And I kept that experience a secret for many years because I thought, oh, people will look down on me if I share that, I was filled with anxiety. And it wasn't until years later when I finally sat down and wanted to get myself healthy and got together with a Christian counselor. They make you fill out a sheet, have you ever done this, ever done that? And then one of the questions on the sheet was, have you ever had an anxiety attack? And so I said, well, I had this experience several years ago at the airport. And my counselor kind of leaned in. He goes, what was it like? I'm like, dude, you're sadistic. He just was too eager. And he's like, what was it like? And so I said, it felt like I was about to die. And he goes, did you die? And I go, no. Right? And he goes, see, you learned that you're going to be okay. And that was like light bulbs going off for me. When anxiety overwhelms you, you can choose either humility or pride. And Jesus, through Peter, says, humble yourselves under God's mighty hand that he might lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Then Peter says, be alert and of sober mind because your enemy, you have an enemy, right? Even if you're not into church stuff, if you're irreligious, guess what? You have an enemy. And this enemy, the devil, he prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Now, I've been to Africa several times. I've been on African safaris, and it's very interesting. Lions are the only felines in the world that travel in packs. All the other cats, they're like loners. You got your cat at your house? Anybody a cat owner? You realize that if that cat was bigger than you, it would eat you. That's why it's looking at you. I could take her, right? Lions are the only cats that go in packs. And when they have prey, they're very slow. And they make a circle. You've seen The Lion King, right? And they circle you, and then one or two will come out while the others are hidden. And they'll roar. And as the prey, you instinctively want to run away, and that is when the pride of lions get you, when you run away from the roar. That's why African leaders will tell you that when a lion roars, the safest thing you can do is to run toward the roar. Your enemy prowls like a lion. We'll go back to that slide so you can see this. Your enemy, the enemy is like a lion. He wants to rip your faith apart. And Peter says, resist him by standing firm in the faith. What I'm telling you is that when anxiety roars, when you're overwhelmed with feelings that are not of God, don't run away, run toward the roar. Face what you fear the most because your enemy, the lion, did you know, he is on a leash. He only has as much power over your life as you allow. And he can only paralyze us as much as we choose. See, Jesus says to cast all your anxiety on him. You don't need to carry that weight anymore. And the power to run towards the roar is not like something you gin up inside of you. It's what God releases within you. See, because of the cross, we don't fight for victory, we fight from victory. We can run toward the roar and we can humble ourselves under God's mighty hand. That's how Peter starts it. He says, humble yourselves under God's mighty hand, because there's a direct connection. There's a direct correlation between our anxiety and our pride. Let's get to the heart of it. You're overwhelmed with anxiety and stress. You can't sleep at night. You're freaking out. Your anxiety is tied to your pride. Because anxiety asks, oh, how will I look? How will I maintain control? Did you know you don't have control in life? Think about the two biggest events in your life. When you're born, when you're dying. Can you control when and where you're born? Nope. Can you control when and where you die? Nope. Control is an illusion. This is Counseling 101. And once you understand and accept that you really don't have control, all you can do is trust someone else. And his name is Jesus. And when you cast your anxiety on him, he can release peace and joy and his presence in your life. When those women were filled with anxiety and joy, what does Jesus do? He shows up. See, you and I, here's the secret. Here's the whole secret to the human experience right here. You ready? Set your DVRs to record. This is it. I have a great need for Christ, and I have a great Christ for my need. I have a great need for Christ, and I have a great Christ for my need. Say that with me. I have a great need for Christ, and I have a great Christ for my need. See, on that Easter Sunday, the risen King in Matthew 28, verse 9, he met them in their anxiety, and he said, greetings. The women came to him, clasped his feet, and worshiped him. Because in life you will have worry, but you can choose to worship. In life you will have anxiety attacks, but you can choose to run toward the roar. In life you will be overwhelmed, but trust the one who has overwhelmed sickness, sin, and death. When anxiety attacks, you have a choice. When you start to feel the anxiety roll into your life, choose to focus on the risen carpenter king, Jesus Christ, who conquered sin and death. Grab him by the ankles if you have to, and let worship overcome your worry. Worship is saying he is greater than me. Worship is humbling yourself under his mighty hand. And when you place your trust and your faith in that scarred hands of the carpenter king, the anxiety will give way to peace and joy. And that is why on that Easter Sunday, the risen King said to them 4 simple words: do not be afraid. Can we pray together? Bow our heads and close our eyes. Some of us this Easter weekend, we are here a ball of anxiety. We are stressed out about our bills. We are worried about our appearance. We are losing sleep over tomorrow. And it's really about you're trying to control something that you don't have control over. That's pride. You are placing yourself above God. Only God has control, and God says, bring me your anxieties. Eclipse your worry with worship. And worship is when you look to someone bigger, when you focus your gaze on someone greater. You were created for a person. His name is Jesus. He loves you so much that he died to conquer the regrets and the sins and the anxieties of your world, to usher you into a new world. And he says simply, trust me. So with every head bowed, every eye closed, in this moment, you can block out the people around you. You have permission to place your focus on God because he is drawing near to you. Just as Jesus drew near to the women in their anxiety. And in this moment, in this time, you can trust Christ. He's a greater leader than you've ever known. He's a greater forgiver than you've ever known. You have a great need for Christ, and you have a great Christ for your need. So every head bowed, every eye closed, I want to invite you to start that journey of faith. I want to invite you into a bigger story, God's story. It's so much better than the story you've been walking in. It's an adventure, and the invitation is set before you now. So I'm going to count to 3 in just a minute and invite you to slip your hand in the air if you're ready to take that step of faith, if you're ready to start a fresh, new journey with Christ. Let's count to 3. 1. The time is now. This is the time. This is the place. 2. Jesus died for you. Jesus lives for you. Will you let Jesus live in you? And 3. I'm going to invite you to slip your hand in the air for just a moment to begin that new journey. There's a hand and there's a hand, and we'll wait for you. There's a hand. 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll still wait for you. There's time. 8, 9. That is so awesome. You can put your hands down and make this your prayer. It's about your heart, not the words. You can silently pray, Father, you know I'm overwhelmed with shadows in the past and the unknowns of the future, but tonight, this Easter, I am trusting Jesus as my leader and my forgiver. And Father, this is a safe place. This church, it is okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way. And Father, we thank you that we can begin that journey with you through your Son who speaks life over us all. God, we love you. And we worship you now in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, the band's going to lead us in one last song. The ushers are going to pass around some offering buckets. If you're visiting for the first time tonight, do me a favor. Please leave your wallet in your pocket. We're not after your money. But if you stuck your hand in the air and you really meant it in your heart that you're beginning a new journey with Christ, I'm proud of you. This church loves you. And after we dismiss, after this final song, we have a free gift for you. If you really meant that, make sure you swing by the merch counter. We want to give you a t-shirt. Just a physical reminder of a faith decision you made tonight. Now, don't be that person who's like, I want a free t-shirt just because you want a shirt. But there's no weirdness, nothing. No one's going to put you on the spot. Just walk up and say, hey, John said I could grab a free shirt. And my friends Allison and Monica will set you up. And if you're visiting for the first time, they've got a free gift for you too. But let's stand up to worship one last time together.